Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode in the series Conversations with Shelly. I am Shelly. Thank you for joining. If you're joining for the first time, welcome. And if you've been with me for at least the last 37 weeks, welcome back. So, just to give you some idea as to what we normally do here on a weekly basis, I normally give you an update as to where I'm at week by week, giving you, of course, my statistics, where I started, how am I feeling, what is happening within the space, GLP wise, what new medications are on the horizon. As you know, there are so many things that are happening with Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, who are the manufacturers of the drug. Um, New side effects that persons have been registering and now have been putting a name to a lot of these medications. I'm going to talk about one of them today. Sorry, not the medication, but the side effects. And I'm going to talk about one of them today that I have been experiencing, but was not able to put a name to it until, I've seen it happening, or I've seen the conversation within the space surrounding this particular side effect. But let me just start off with my stats. So, as I mentioned, I'm in week 38 of my active GLP-1 journey. I started August of 2025, specifically on the 18th, and I started at 215 pounds, and I ended my active weight loss journey, which I often refer to as phase one. I ended that at week 26. So I lost a significant portion of my weight between week 1 to week 26, and that was about 40% of my total body composition. And I went into maintenance on week 27. I believe I went into maintenance the 6th of March 2026. So I have been in maintenance for the last 12 weeks, and I'm going to give you a breakdown of my maintenance journey thus far. And if you want to see what my active weight loss journey has been, which I label as phase one, you can always go back and look at my playlist. I've archived it for you. But ultimately, I want to just go through the last 11 weeks of maintenance, which I am now in. But as I said, it's 38 weeks, 12 of which have been my maintenance. So let us start with some stats as I mentioned. So I am 5 feet 6 inches. As I said, I started at 215 pounds, and I started that August of last year, the 18th of August, and I would have ended my active weight loss journey or phase one sometime around February of 2026, right? And I went straight into maintenance. Now, I started maintenance. I hit maintenance at about 145 pounds, which was at the time not necessarily my goal weight, but it was a goal that I had in mind that brought me to decide to go on my maintenance journey at that particular weight. And I discussed this in previous videos as to what that particular goal was. Now, being in this maintenance phase, so many things have become mundane or almost like a routine. And I often say here that it has become almost like a rut, because the excitement that you would normally experience going through your active phase one suddenly is no longer what you're experiencing in the subsequent phase, which I call phase two, which is the maintenance phase. Because what is happening in your maintenance phase is ultimately your body is trying to find its set point, as they call it, trying to find that point that it is comfortable at. And for many of us, while we are not necessarily trying to lose weight, as the case may be during this particular phase, some have stalled for many, 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 many months, and some continue to lose weight. Now, I am one of those persons who um, I managed to still lose weight in my maintenance phase, and that was somewhat of a concern for me, because at some point in time you don't want to get to that point where your weight loss becomes start to be an adverse thing to you. And while I was very happy to have gotten to, that goal, I somehow still continue to lose weight. Now, a lot of persons have asked me, have DM me and asked me, is it what dose I'm on? I started maintenance on, I ended my active goal weight phase at the 7.5 milligram Tirzepatide, and I entered maintenance titrating down from the 7.5 to 5 milligram. And shortly after doing that, I realized that the appetite suppression was not as strong. The food noise were back. The appetite cravings, the food cravings, all of those things were just knocking at the door in a very loud way. So I decided that I would not maintain on the 5 milligram dose. I would go back to my weight loss dose, which was a 7.5. And I have been on the 7.5 since, in some way, shape, or form. Either I have done a split dose where I split it 5 to 2.5, or I split it. I have done some version of a split dose. Very recently, I realized that my body was also acclimatized at a 7.5, and I decided that somewhere along week 10, I would have done a 10 milligram just to test the water to see if I needed to titrate up. I did that, and that was where I realized that I was hit with the new side effect called adonia. Let me just tell you what that is. Yeah, anhedonia, right? And that is when I realized that everybody else within the space was also talking about that particular side effect. Now, I wanted to raise this side effect because it only happened to me when I hit the 10 milligram. And before then, I had no idea that there was such a thing. And I'm sure that was the case for most persons. But ultimately, what it is, it's a feeling of all, joy and anything that comes with feeling pleasure in things that you would normally find pleasurable. Suddenly, you're not finding pleasure or any joy in doing them anymore. And not only was this a real thing for me during, week 10 when I increased to 10 milligram, but also the side effect of extreme fatigue came on where I literally couldn't keep my eyes open. I was extremely tired, and I was having difficulties just pulling myself up out of bed in order to function. So that is when I realized that no matter what my intent was in increasing my dose, I had to titrate down back to the 7.5, and I had to be able to manage somewhat of the food noise that I thought required and needed me to have gone to the 10. So at this point in time, I'm down back to my 7.5 and have been able to manage the food noise and the appetite, the lack of appetite suppression to some extent. And what I have started to do now is to increase my calories, because a lot of what has been happening to me in terms of the food noise was because I was still having this low caloric diet. So I, had to go up in terms of what I was having, more so my protein and my fiber. So I'm happy to register now that the feeling of not wanting to enjoy anything has subsided. I'm not saying that it's totally gone, but it has taken a little bit of a backseat now that I have titrated back down to 7.5 over the last 2 weeks. So I have noticed, however, that the fatigue is still there. And what is alarming is that the fatigue is it is very predictable, in the sense that it happens at a particular point of the day every day. So it doesn't happen in the mornings, and it certainly doesn't happen in the afternoon, in the evenings rather, but it was right there in the afternoon. So anytime between, say, 12 and 2, I get extremely, extremely, extremely tired, to the point where my brain suddenly gets foggy and conversations are not locking in as they should. And what I normally do in this instance is I try to have my meal at that particular point in time. So I will have set times now that I eat in order to reduce that fatigue as much as possible. And I will also try to ensure that I'm having my sufficient amount of water intake. So for week 38 update, I will say that those were my noticeable mentions. I did change my injection site for the first time since I've been, and meaning the first time since I've been, because I usually have my injection site somewhere on my arm when it was being administered to me, or in the four quadrants of my tummy. For the first time in week 38, I decided to do it underarm. So I would not was now taking my injection underarm, which was the first that has ever been done. I can't say that it made any difference, but I am still taking mental note as to whether or not the efficacy of the medication is potent, with it being taken under the arm as opposed to on top of the arm or in my midsection on the four quadrants, as you know, the manufacturers suggest. I have also increased my water intake because I have noted as well that my elasticity in my skin is coming back. I'm very happy to register that. Also, I think that has to do with also I've been taking multivitamin and I have been using topical GHKCU for the collagen rebuild. So that is something to mention. I have also been eating a lot of boiled eggs, and I don't know if that also contributes now to the elasticity that is coming back into my skin, but I'm very, very grateful for what is happening to the skin because, as you know, with rapid weight loss, we tend to have a lot of loose skin. Um, More so in the face. Well, certainly from me and my experience, I had a lot of loose skin in my face, not necessarily anywhere else, but I could have seen where my skin was. My face was not as um, flushed as it was flushed and not as bright and you know plump as it was. So I made sure that I went on this journey to maintaining that youthful look that I guess we're all hoping to maintain. And I would have mentioned some of these in my previous videos. So yeah, that would be it. Hanindonia. Hanindonia. I want to do something else on Hanindonia just for my personal own experience and to let you know exactly what happened week 10 when I increased my dose to 10 milligrams. No, I spoke with my provider about this and it was a suggestion right after we did it and I noted the impact on my body. Of course, I went right back down. So we'll do something different on that. But the side effect that I registered with that increase in dose was anhedonia. I still experience um, thirst and change in taste. I do register those still. Not, as I said, nothing to write home about, but still something to mention, a noticeable mention. And every now and again, there has been a little bit of a nauseated or dizzy spell that comes over me. Um, I don't think that is really, affiliated with the medication, but again, I wanted to register. It didn't happen very much, for me to make it an issue, but I did have 1 or 2 days when I just felt a little bit nauseated or a little bit dizzy, and I just had to sit still for a little bit. But I also have to be careful how I um, note these side effects week on week because sometimes our lives by themselves just become hectic and we have to be careful what we attribute to the medication versus what is just everyday lifing. So that little weird dizzy spell that I experienced for about 2 mornings, I don't think it had to do with the medication, but more so I had 2 hectic days. I can register that as being the cause. But I will continue to follow it through. And that would be it for my week 39 update. As I said, in maintenance, things are a little bit slow, things are a little bit mundane, things are a little bit routine at this point in time. Nothing new is happening, nothing new is changing, and we're just maintaining what we've lost and what we need to do. Doing a little bit of resistance training as well. Still walking around with my 5 pound ankle and wrist um, weights, and those have been helping with the strength in my legs and just building back, a lot of the um, loose skin, for want of a better word. As I said, I don't think I had much of that happening, but just to maintain that firm feel that I had when I was much more plumped, yes, I've been doing that. As always, I encourage you to chronicle your journey. If you're considering a GLP-1 journey, I do so in my Tirzepatide journal, which I always, refer to, so that I am aware of what conversations I need to have with my provider and my doctor, and of course, just to update you, as the weeks go by. So, thank you as always for sticking and staying with me on week 38 of my total GLP-1 journey using branded Mounjaro slash compound Tirzepatide, and also my week 12 on my maintenance phase 2 journey. And until I see you next week when we talk about week 39 and this new side effect, Hanindonia, I'll see you then.